Hello and welcome. You're on Friday Double Bill, India's one and only full-length film review show. I think if you're anywhere close to a theatre these days, it's a good time to go in. My name is Mayank Shekhar. Fahad Samar will let you know why.
Exactly. Now coming up on the show are two rather infantile sounding films, first of which is Baby, the next Dolly Ki Doli, followed by our reviews of The Imitation Game, The Theory of Everything and American Sniper, Oscar buzz all the way.
The film Baby, directed by Neeraj Pandey, is an action thriller named after a special armed forces unit that deals in top secret missions set abroad. Akshay Kumar plays the main guy of this unit. During the film, he undertakes three major operations, starting with Istanbul, then Kathmandu, and finally Saudi Arabia. The target is both the Indian Mujahideen and the Lashkar-e-Toiba. What this Indian spy group called Baby intends to do, essentially, is avert a terror attack that's being planned at the moment.
You know, Mayank, I think what is so important in this age of television shows like 24,
right,
where you have the Jack Bauer character, who's so effective in terms of dealing with counterterrorism, uses torture without any compunctions. Obviously, the Akshay Kumar character has been based on this character, and you've also got a lot of Argo,
right,
the Oscar-winning film. So this is a combination of that. Really slick, beautiful cinematography by Sudeep Chatterjee, who's done outstanding work. Slick as it comes, but maybe 40 minutes too long as far as I'm concerned, because you just have the same thing. You know, I think this is a film that really was in need of an editor more than anything else. You've also got this blaring background score, and I think with the advent of Dolby Atmos, it's going to be a while before our Indian filmmakers realize that less is sometimes more. Having said all that, I think this is probably one of the best films that Akshay Kumar has done in a long, long time. Neeraj has acquitted himself admirably in terms of just having a great grasp on it, except, like I said, there are scenes that could just have been easily lopped off in the last 40 minutes of the film, and the film would have been so much better. Would you agree?
Well, this is an Akshay Kumar film, Fahad, you're forgetting. And the fact that we can even discuss this movie is a big deal to begin with. Because I think Akshay Kumar, I think last film that we watched of his was called Entertainment,
yes,
which was anything but entertaining. And that's not even, you know, the tip of the iceberg, because he does about 4 or 5 films every year, which
well,
are
don't
atrocious
forget,
in
actually,
their own
no,
ways.
we survived good old
Shawkeens that you liked, by the way.
Shawkeens,
Yeah.
which I actually liked
Right.
very much, and I thought he did a great job of sending himself up. So I have a new respect for
Fair
Akshay
enough.
Kumar.
Yeah, so I mean, talking about his entire career, so to say, I think even he will be embarrassed by watching his own retrospective, to be very fair to him. I don't think he makes films keeping a story in mind as such, but I think his presence is good enough for his audiences. And from that perspective, I think this is an incredible movie, you know, because it's a movie, you know, and it stars Akshay Kumar. It has a storyline, although I'm not too sure about the plot. I think the plot was much stronger in Special 26, which is the last film that Akshay did with Neeraj Pandey, the same director, who I think is a fine talent. I think he knows how to create tension and then to release it and then to create it again. I think that's the only reason that we managed to watch a film that doesn't have much of a storyline, that is detailed, yes, but you don't even know who this character is as such. Is he a raw agent? Is he a cop? Because he seems to deal with cops. And what kind of spy has direct access to the Home Minister of India, you know? So in that sense, I think I'll have to give it to the director, because with very flimsy screenplay, he managed to hold your attention.
Well, you know, I mean, what kind of spy has access to the Home Minister is Jack Bauer. Obviously, it's the same story, and I think Anil Kapoor playing Jack Bauer, the Desi version thereof, this is clearly that. I mean, you know, there's a wonderful scene in the film, which is my favorite, where he goes to interrogate a suspect, and he's not sure whether he's going to be a tough nut to crack. So he lays a really long danda and a jar of Vaseline in the interrogation room, and the guy says, "I'll tell you whatever you want, just back away from me." I thought that was hysterical.
Well, we're getting into the moments now, which means quite clearly we'll get into the oh my god moments from Baby.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there are two women in this film. One plays Akshay Kumar's wife, who has a really redundant role. She gets on your nerves every time she appears.
It's the same phone call again and again.
Mercifully, you know, she has a very limited role to play. And then there is this other raw agent, this baby unit, who is the honey trap, played by a little known starlet called Tapsi Pannu. who just did a truly kick-ass job,
Yeah.
quite literally.
Yeah.
Because in Nepal, she goes after this, Mujahideen kind of character who's supposedly hanging out in Nepal, and she really kicks his butt.
Right.
And it's a wonderful role reversal because you have Akshay Kumar rushing to save her, but in fact, she doesn't need any saving. On the contrary, she gives it to him good and proper. So good on you.
No,
I
absolutely.
think this is great
Yeah.
stuff.
I'm glad that you picked that as your oh my god moment, because that was also the one that I thought, in terms of, just the role reversal, in terms of the way that particular scene comes, the way the character is treated, because we know very little about most other characters in this film, as it is true for most Akshay Kumar movies, but I think each one is dealt with some finesse, even someone like a Rana Dugapatti. He's a fine looking guy, has exactly 1 or 2 lines in the entire film. He's chosen to do this movie for just that appearance, but it's just in the writing. I think
is.
even Anupam Kher, for that matter, they all appear for 2 or 3 minutes, but they all leave an impact, and I think that for me is really oh my god.
So Mayank, I think refreshingly in the new year, one can unequivocally say this is a film that you should watch. Theatre mein dekho. By all means, on this weekend itself. It's a real paisa vasool film as far as I'm concerned. Go for it. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a double dekho from our end. One, that it's an Akshay Kumar movie, and I think at some level we're doing social service by ensuring, or at least encouraging Akshay Kumar to do films of this nature, which have a storyline to begin with, or at least is a film to start with. And yes, dekho, theatre pe dekho. Perhaps is weekend ko dekho.
Dolly Ki Doli, directed by debutant Abhishek Dogra, is the story of a beautiful young con woman called Dolly, played by Sonam Kapoor, and her toli of merry men and women who pose as her family members and con unsuspecting men into marrying her. Her modus operandi involves drugging all the family members at night and then decamping with all their wedding jewelry and household goods. Sooner or later, the law and her jilted husbands are bound to catch up with Dolly. What transpires thereafter forms the basis of this rom-con.
So far as you know, I'm really scared of Sonam Kapoor's movies, because the last one that I saw was Khoobsurat. The one before that I saw was, I think, Aisha, and of course there have been a few. But then the ones that are centered on her, I find them a little hard to take, and therefore I have not seen the film yet. What do you think of it?
Well, I'll tell you, I thought it was the most rollicking first half that I have seen in the longest time.
Oh, really? Wow.
Just a wonderfully put together, tight comic caper with fantastic performances. I think Sonam Kapoor has given the performance of a lifetime with this
which isn't
film.
saying much, but hey.
Hey, no, I think she just did a great job. You have Rajkumar Rao, dependable as ever, doing a Haryanvi Jat, playing it to perfection. You've got Pulkit Samrat in the role of a poor man's Dabang character, but that's fine. We can forgive him that. And we have Varun Sharma, who we last saw in Fukre, pretty much playing the same role,
right,
but very effective. The little Panju with Archana Puran Singh as his mother. So they have taken great pains to really put together a wonderful ensemble cast. There's not a false note. And all of us who watched that film, all these critics, looked at each other and I said, oh my God, can this be at the interval point that this is really a terrific film? I just hope it doesn't suffer from the fate of the curse of the second half. Unfortunately, the second half kind of falls on its face, but it's still quite delightful, and I'm really pleased to say that I had a pretty good time watching this film. I have absolutely no compunctions about recommending it. Theatre mein dekho, isi weekend pe dekho, have some fun at the movies. There are 2 Hindi films that you can actually have fun with, so just knock yourself out. Mayank and I felt really taken for a ride when we sat through Taken 3. But let's find out what the Desi Martini audience has to say.
Taken 3 is rated at 3.3 out of 5 on Desi Martini. Desi Martini's verdict says what started out as Liam Neeson's epic trilogy to be went out with one final splutter. One of the reviewers says, not as amazing as Taken 1, but surprisingly better than Taken 2.
Well, that's for the Bollywood releases. We've loved, or at least you've loved both. I've loved one. So it's a double dekho and a single dekho.
Starring Eddie Redmayne and Felicity Jones, The Theory of Everything is the extraordinary story of one of the world's greatest living minds, the renowned astrophysicist Stephen Hawking, who falls deeply in love with fellow Cambridge student Jane Wilde in 1963. Once a healthy, active young man, Hawking received an earth-shattering diagnosis at the age of 21. With Jane fighting by his side, Hawking embarks on his most ambitious scientific work, studying the very thing he now has precious little of: time. Together, they defy impossible odds, breaking new ground in medicine and science and achieving more than they could ever have dreamed.
You know, Fahad here is a guy who anybody who's ever read a newspaper has seen him. At least in images, of course, seen his interviews. He's a living legend. He's a celebrity in his own right. He's, a best-selling author. Now to play someone who's around us with such finesse, I was absolutely blown away by not just the fact that, that the lead actor looks so much like Stephen Hawking, but also feels so much like him, to a point where I thought maybe it's just him, being cast for this particular role. I am not surprised at all that this is the performance that got the lead actor, the best actor at Golden Globe, and I really hope that turns out to be slightly true for the Oscars as well.
Really, what a remarkable performance. No question, Eddie Redmayne just sort of steals the show. Also, he comes from wealth and upbringing. He's a Cambridge boy. He was with Prince William in university. So, he comes from the same stock that Stephen Hawking came from. But what really I loved was the performance of Felicity Jones.
That's true.
So luminous, so radiant as Jane, who sort of stands by her man and just is with him through thick and thin. Their life, of course, goes through several upheavals, and it is documented. The film is actually based on her biography about her life with Stephen Hawking. So I found it a little sanitized, unfortunately. And I think that was the biggest failing as far as I'm concerned, that I wish it had been a little more visceral instead of, this really pretty looking Cambridge town and gown kind of film. In 1952, British authorities entered the home of mathematician, cryptanalyst and war hero Alan Turing, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, to investigate a reported burglary. They instead ended up arresting Turing himself on charges of gross indecency, an accusation that would lead to his devastating conviction for the criminal offense of homosexuality. Little did officials know they were actually incriminating the pioneer of modern-day computing. Famously leading a motley group of scholars, linguists, chess champions, and intelligence officers, Alan Turing was credited with cracking the so-called unbreakable codes of Germany's World War II Enigma machine. An intense and haunting portrayal of a brilliant, complicated man, The Imitation Game follows a genius who, under nail-biting pressure, helped to shorten the war and in turn saved thousands of lives.
I think what's common between both The Theory of Everything and The Imitation Game, Fahad, is the fact that it deals with the lives of geniuses. And while we always look up to geniuses in our society, what we do not realize is that they lead very difficult lives. And I think what's common between Stephen Hawking and Alan Turing, we've known about him forever, but I had no idea about this story. Of course, we knew about the fact that he broke the Enigma code. But hey, man, that's a pretty tough life to lead. To be that intelligent isn't always that great, perhaps.
Well, of course, the uncanny thing is that both these films are biopics about brilliant Britishers in Cambridge. So it's that kind of era. Very, very similar, great Oscar material. I think these kind of films are almost designed for the Oscars. But for me, the real tragedy and brilliance of this film is about Turing himself. As a closeted homosexual, he suffered so much, and the character that is, of course, played by Keira Knightley, offers to marry him because she's madly in love with him. And when he confesses that he's gay, she says it doesn't matter because what I'm looking for is companionship. And maybe that's another definition of marriage. But he declines, and her overtures, and eventually he had to suffer chemical castration, which was prescribed by the law at that time. So you can see that the British had such draconian laws which they brought to India. And to me, that awful resonance of the film and what you take away, apart from the tortured genius of Turing, is the fact that in this country we are still suffering the legacy of the British while they've moved on, and we can't deal with our homosexuals in a way that gives them dignity and respect. A real tragedy.
No, absolutely. And I think looking at the tragedy, man, Alan Turing's life in itself, the fact that he's that bright is also another aspect of this movie. And what I found absolutely fascinating is that Benedict Cumberbatch plays this part, because the big problem with being in a very popular television show, and Sherlock in his case, is that you always tend to believe that that guy is Sherlock. That's happened to so many people. Alan Alda, every time I see Alan Alda, I always think of MASH.
Hawkeye.
They always kill their careers by starring in a television show, and I think it was very important for this fine actor to play such an important character that now it's not Sherlock anymore, and he does it with like serious panache.
Absolutely, and let's hope that it's going to be a big clash of the British Titans as far as I'm concerned for the Oscars. Cumberbatch versus Eddie Redmayne. It's going to be a tough
there are
battle.
others too, but one thing we're very clear about, and that's something that Hollywood is realizing, guys like Weinstein certainly have, there are two things that will always fetch your nomination. One, if it's British, and second, if it's a biopic. This is both.
Clint Eastwood directs American Sniper, starring Bradley Cooper as Chris Kyle, the most lethal sniper in US military history. His pinpoint accuracy saves countless lives on the battlefield in Iraq, and he soon earns the nickname Legend. Despite the danger as well as the toll on his family at home, Chris serves through 4 harrowing tours of duty in Iraq, becoming emblematic of the Navy SEAL creed to leave no man behind. But upon returning home, Chris finds that it is the war that he can't leave behind. Mayank, I was so happy to see this film because it marks the return to form of good old Clint Eastwood, and bless him, in his 80s.
Crazy.
He's still in control, completely captain of his ship, guiding this, epic war film, which at the same time as being a very intensely personal story, has this huge canvas of Iraq and Fallujah and the war and all of that. My biggest problem with this film is that while it stands perfectly all right on its own, there was a film virtually identical made a few years ago called The Hurt Locker, which swept all the Oscars. Very famously, Catherine Bigelow, of course, directs it and beats her ex-husband, James Cameron, for Avatar. So it was a huge upset. And it's just really Jeremy Renner plays the great bomb disposal expert, and you intercut between the battle-scarred veteran going home, unhappy in America, maybe happier on the battlefield. It's a very complex film, and I wonder what possessed Clint Eastwood to remake this film with a sniper.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing at some level, and not just Hurt Locker. If you see like the early episodes of Homeland, is roughly that. So in that sense, I think of all the movies that have been nominated for Best Film, this was one movie that I wasn't so ecstatic about. One, because of its inherent politics. I mean, you can glorify a sniper only that much, and also a war that is not justified. I mean, the fact that there was American invasion of Iraq is something that most liberals across the world agree was a mistake on America's part, and then to say how great this man was, giving up his life for his country. Oh man, I mean, in that sense, I didn't agree with the politics, of course, but hey, what performance. I mean, Bradley Cooper, I mean, this guy who I loved in Hangover is this guy who plays this massive war machine. 160 people he's killed as a sniper, and that's when I realized it's not so much about the storyline, Fahad. Sometimes movies work on you at various levels, and of all the movies, this is the one that I ended up watching twice.
I mean, bearded, buffed up,
gritty,
completely, wonderful performance by Bradley Cooper, fascinating performance by Sienna Miller, again a Brit actress playing American, just doing a great job as the wife. All of these elements undeniably have come together beautifully. This is top-notch filmmaking, but at the end of the day, as we said, unfortunately it's deja vu.
Well, that brings us to the end of Friday Double Bill. Tell us what you think of the show. Tell us what you think of the movies. We'll be very happy to get back to you.